After a rough start, the Columbus Blue Jackets are starting to find their game. Jay Forster of Locked On Blue Jackets joins us to discuss the latest developments, all that and more next on the Locked On NHL Podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. It is great to welcome back to the show the host, or I should say co-host of Locked On Blue Jackets, Jay Forster. And Jay, the Jackets are starting to find their way a little bit more, getting some more wins, playing a little better, some big wins against some quality opponents. What's been the difference lately?
I think it's just that the team is kind of figuring it out a little more. Like, it's a very young team. And there's a lot of new faces, and there's been a lot of kind of upheaval in terms of, the coaching changes at the start of the season. I say changes multiple because it's, it is what it is. But I think it's just that the team is starting to figure it out. I think players like Adam Fantilli are getting even more comfortable in the NHL. I think guys are finding some synergy, some chemistry. And I think guys like, Kent Johnson, who got sent down, has, since he came back from the AHL, has been phenomenal, in my opinion. Igor Chinakov, former first-round pick, who has kind of been slowly figuring it out. It seems to have finally clicked for him. And the goaltending has been better than expected, which for the Blue Jackets is kind of important. Because I don't remember the last time, and I've kind of said this on Locked On Blue Jackets a lot, is I'm not worried about the goaltending right now, and I don't remember the last time I wasn't at least a little bit worried about one of the Blue Jackets goalies, going all the way back to maybe since the Bobrovsky days. So it's all clicking. They're figuring things out. I know Blue Jackets fans are tired of hearing people talk about how close the team is to winning, but it really does feel like they are taking some steps forward. They just need to do it consistently now.
All right, so there is progress. Let's talk about Fantilli, such a important prospect. He's on a 20-goal pace. Plus, what is he doing well, and where does he need a little more work to get to that next level?
I think it helps that he's been given one good line mate, so they've kind of been moving him around the lineup, trying to figure out where he goes. Boone Jenner broke his jaw. So he was out for 6 weeks. I think he's just after 3 weeks into that recovery timeline, but they needed someone to play with Gaudreau. And so they put Fantilli there, and those two have clicked really well. So I think that's definitely helping. And I think, Johnny Gaudreau is just such a unique talent on the Blue Jackets in that he just creates offense like no one else. And he finally has someone that can finish that offense. And he's kind of been struggling with that this season. So I think it's getting line mates that understand, getting line mates that kind of play on that same level as Fantilli. And I do think also it's that adjustment period of, okay, we're not playing in college anymore. We're playing against, full-grown adults. And Fantilli is a very mature 19, but he's also 19. So for him kind of figuring out how to adjust his game to that style of play, I think has kind of been really crucial. But he's just such a special player. You asked what he does well, and the answer is almost everything. I would like to see faceoffs continue to improve. I would like to see some improvement in his D-zone coverage, but every time he gets the puck, I'm like, okay, hold on, something cool is going to happen here. He's going to create a chance, or he's going to score a goal, or he's going to make a pass that, I would love for him and Gaudreau to get another winger that exists on that kind of same cerebral style game, because at the minute they've had Jack Rostovich on the wing for a while. They had Justin Danforth on the wing for a while before that, and they're both fine players. Justin Danforth especially is kind of, he has the little engine that could energy to his game of, he's not the most talented, he's not the fastest, he's not the biggest, but damn it, he's going to work the hardest. But I would love to see them with another skilled guy like Ken Johnson on that line. I think that would really pop. So but Fantilli, like you said, he's on a 20-goal pace right now. My hot take for the beginning of the season was 30 goals, 30 assists for Fantilli. And I still think he's going to get there. And obviously, really bad news out of Chicago. Bedard is out for maybe 6 weeks, maybe longer, with a fractured jaw. And that sucks because he was having such a great rookie season. He was being a lot of fun to watch, even as someone, who follows a different team. The Calder race just got real interesting, in my opinion. So I would love to see Fantilli continue to take strides forward and maybe challenge for the Calder even more than he kind of already is. I believe he's still second in rookie scoring right now. I know Brock Faber has kind of come in as a contender for the Calder, and rightly so, having watched him watching the Blue Jackets against Minnesota on Saturday night. Phenomenal player, but Calder voters still like it when the rookies get lots of points, and it's looking really good for Fantilli at the minute. So that's really, really exciting. In a season that was lost by American Thanksgiving, it's really exciting to look at guys like Fantilli and be like, okay, you can see what this guy is going to be like in 5, 10, 15 years and what the team around him could look like by that point as well.
You mentioned the goaltending being less of a concern. How much of that is better play from the goalies, and how much of that is a little healthier on the blue line and better play in front of the goalies?
Yeah, it's little column A, little column B. I think the goalies have been playing better, and I think part of that is due to they parted with their longtime goaltending coach over the offseason. They brought in Nicklas Backstrom, not that Nicklas Backstrom, the Finnish one, longtime NHL goalie. And I don't know how much improvement is due to him, but the goalies look better. They look more confident. And, for a guy like Elvis Merzlikins, who has really kind of struggled with his confidence for the past couple of seasons, he looks so much better on the ice. And part of that is probably the eye test of me thinking his stats are better. So I think he looks better, but he looks confident. He's making saves and he's not being rattled by goals the same way that, the Elvis of last season would have been. But I do think that it is partially that the defense has been better. Zach Werenski out with an injury at the minute, but he's been great for the Blue Jackets this season. Provorov's had his ups and downs. I think Severson has been a really good improvement. And honestly, Eric Abramson has been a real bright spot for the blue line this season, which I spent most of last season calling for his head. So this is me not necessarily eating my words, but he is thriving in a role that's not play 27 minutes a night. He's playing 18 to 20 minutes a night. He currently has, I believe, 13 or 14 points on the season. His career high is 17. So he's on pace to, I think, double that this season. So he's having a really great year. Just the results haven't been what we wanted, but individual performances from so many guys have been so much better this season. I think that's really encouraging signs from basically everyone on the team.
We've turned the calendar to 2024, the trade deadline not that far away. What do you expect the Blue Jackets to do? Because even with this improvement, it doesn't look like they're going to be a playoff team this year.
Yeah, and I keep bringing up the St. Louis Blues of, I think it was 2018 or 2019, right. Dead last in the league on January 1st, win the cup. And so, I'm clinging to that because I need some kind of hope in my life, but the Blue Jackets probably are making the playoffs. It's interesting that you asked, because I was just looking at their cap friendly earlier today, and usually the guys that move at the trade deadline are, the pending UFAs, the good veteran pieces that other teams love, The Blue Jackets don't have a ton of expiring contracts beyond RFAs that they're going to want to keep. So Texier needs a new contract. Johnson, Marchenko, Sillinger, Chinikov all need new contracts. Jack Roslovic is an expiring UFA. I could see moving, especially if he continues to he's been not as good as I want him to be, but better than I expected him to be. So he's definitely a piece that's in the mix. I think Andrew Peak is a guy, he just signed an extension this summer, I believe. So he's got 3 years under contract, but I think he could be a really good add for a team that's wanting to add, some physicality, some shot blocking, which, NHL GMs love the kind of hockey that Andrew Peeke plays. And I think probably there is a playoff style team that will bring him in, and he will, again, thrive in a role that is smaller than the one he was inhabiting for the Blue Jackets. The only other piece is, I think it's not a not insignificant chance that Ivan Provorov moves. He's got 2 years left on his deal, but the Blue Jackets, I believe, are only paying 2/3 of his contract right now. So do they retain 1/3 of his contract and someone else gets him for 2 years for $2.5 million, give or take? I think that's not out of the realm of possibility. And Spencer Martin, who was statistically the second worst goalie in the league last year, has kind of quietly been very good for the Blue Jackets. He's a pending UFA. Blue Jackets rolling 3 goalies at the minute with Merzlikins and Daniil Tarasov, who is finally healthy and looks it again. So I'm sure there's a playoff team that is looking to shore up their goaltending, because playoff teams always want extra goalies, because goalies are fragile. And if you break one, then suddenly you're in a bit of trouble. So there's some pieces. I don't think it's the same as like last season where they basically sold everything with a pulse. But there's definitely some pieces that I think could be moved out for second, third round picks. Maybe a first round pick. Jarmo Kekalainen is usually pretty good at the deadline at acquiring that extra first round pick. But I'm not expecting big moves, but I'm also not expecting no moves. Somewhere kind of in the middle of that.
Fair enough. Jay, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
So you can find Locked On Blue Jackets wherever you get Locked On NHL. We are on Twitter at @LO_Blue Jackets. We're on YouTube. We're on basically every podcast app. We're on SiriusXM. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Forster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find my co-host Hayden Heilsorn over at HaydenH971 on Twitter. And just I can't in good conscience recommend paying attention to the Blue Jackets right now, but if you are a glutton for punishment, then come along for the ride, because it might not be fun, but I do think it will be interesting for the rest of the season.
Very honest approach there by Jay Forster. Jay, thank you so much. Always a pleasure talking hockey with you.
Of course, anytime.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. And the app is so easy to use. There are so many different ways to bet, like live, same-game parlays. You could find new bets in the new Explore tab, or you can head over to the Parlay Hub to make a parlay. That's the best place to find out the most popular parlays, and there's a lot more. And look, you've got the NFL, you've got college football bowl season coming up, you've got pro and college basketball, and of course the NHL. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make your first bet a layup. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.